Hey everyone, Kevin here with your complete roundup on the next rounds of stimulus and stimulus checks. Let's get into the politics and drama of the day. First things first, remember the representative who introduced the Emergency Money for the People Act. That was the act that would give everybody 16 or older $2,000 per month for 6 months, possibly up to 1 year if economic conditions were at certain levels. Well, that representative, Tim Ryan, who co-authored that bill with Ro Khanna, another representative, had this to say on a TikTok last week, which we certainly brought up. I just want to quickly remind you of this TikTok because it's going to show you what Congress has been busy with over the last week, and maybe why we're seeing a delay in the next package.
Okay, I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored.
Right, so that's Tim Ryan. We remember that. Well, guess what I found after hours this morning of scouring congressional activity to bring you the most original content. Take a look at this bill that was submitted. I wonder what it's in reference to. And this, folks, is what Congress is up to while we're all waiting for our stimulus checks. Here you go. Representative Ken Buck has introduced a bill, H.R. 6896, to prohibit certain individuals from downloading or using TikTok on any device issued by the United States or a government corporation. Folks, I kid you not. This is literally the kind of distraction that's happening to prevent talk about our future stimulus checks. But I do always like to provide good news as well, and the good news is that these Treasury-issued debit cards are finally arriving to people. They're apparently coming with this Treasury seal here and a letter from the Treasury Department. The envelope says that it's the Money Network Cardholder Services, and what I encourage you to do to make sure that you're not getting scammed is go to the Treasury Department's website and their press releases, and you can see that they want to refer you to EIPcard.com. And that's where you want to go to make sure that the card you're getting is actually legitimate and not a scam. And in case you don't remember, last week the Treasury Department issued a statement that up to 4 million people were going to be receiving their stimulus checks from round one who still haven't received their stimulus check in the form of a debit card, which does sort of beg the question, does this mean there are potentially going to be future rounds of stimulus and they're using this debit card system as a potential trial run? And certainly makes you scratch your head because otherwise, if it was just for future tax refunds, why would they go through the effort of having a debit card that you would use one time a year? In other news, this is Donald Trump getting ready to go golfing with his masked Secret Service, and as is, of course, Donald Trump, no mask. Now, of course, as usual, that's not to take any sides. My goal is to bring you the most unbiased information that I possibly can as a human being, and I want to provide you some insight from somebody who used to work for the Trump camp, and I want you to see what this economist thinks about the next rounds of stimulus. But first, I do want to quickly remind you that the coupon code for my amazing programs on the psychology of money, real estate agent sales, or real estate investing, and even property management, all 4 of those programs have a coupon code that does expire tomorrow, and I would love to see you in those programs. Remember, when you join those, you pay one time, you get all the content that's there, all the future content, because I'm constantly adding content, that's included. And remember, you get to join me in live streams 5 times per week when the market is open, Monday through Friday, and we talk about money, finances, real estate, investing, you name it. So definitely take advantage of that coupon code expiring down below. But for now, let's take a look at this article in Foreign Policy, which was published by an economist, John Sullivan, who used to be an economic advisor for the Trump administration. And what I love about these people who used to work for the Trump administration is they can actually talk about the Trump administration without the fear of getting fired. Again, not taking sides. You know, Trump might have a reason for firing people, but all I'm saying is these are people who don't work for Trump anymore, so they can say things that people who do work for Trump can't, because they have to have the political filter on. Because always remember, when it comes to Republicans in the Senate or Democrats in the House or the president in the White House, they talk through a political filter that sometimes blurs what they're saying. And my goal is to read between the lines to get you you the truth. Well, let's take a look at what, Joseph Sullivan, not John Sullivan, has to say about the Trump administration and future rounds of stimulus. I'm gonna link this article down below, but as usual, I'm gonna read you some of the highlights. Joseph Sullivan says, look, in normal times, spending more money means, yeah, you have to be worried about budget deficits and deflation. But the problem is, this is not a normal time. In other words, this is the time to spend. Because the issue is, what we have right now is true uncertainty. And that basically says that no matter what kind of decision you make, you are going to make mistakes. And any attempt to try to be perfect right now is actually the worst thing you could try to do. It would be better to spend money and issue more stimulus and then have to dial that back than all of a sudden to realize you're in a situation where you need to give more stimulus, but it's already too late. And it might be too late if you get to a place of irreversible human and economic catastrophe because of being, a lot of folks are so focused on things like inflation and budget deficits, a lot more suffering might come to Main Street. And the author actually goes on to say that this could be a great opportunity for Trump because think about it, the last financial crisis when Obama was president was focused on bailing out Wall Street. Maybe it's time for a president to actually bail out Main Street. This was actually a very interesting argument. And he goes on to say, hey, look, the hope of this V-shaped recovery, pretty much gone. In fact, the V-shaped recovery was expected to basically end in 2023. But this author suggests we might actually, remember, he's an economist, we might actually see the Nike swoosh recovery, which I'm kind of getting tired of all these shapes and W's and all this L-shaped and all these different things. I even heard somebody suggest a K-shaped recovery. I'm sick of the letters. You know what? Maybe the Nike swoosh is a nice sponsored way for some people to describe this because I like that shape. Not that it's great. I mean, I prefer the V, but anyway, it says here that the recovery might not end until 2029. Which might mean we are stuck in not a roaring 20s, but a recovery 20s. And this author goes on to suggest that 110,000 more deaths might actually follow from suicide, alcoholism, and drug abuse, because of this elongated recovery unless more stimulus money is spent. Because what happens is, in his opinion, is people who live through these temporary periods of high unemployment tend to spend less money forever. In other words, this could break the consumer of the United States for a very long time. Think about like your grandma or your great-grandma who lived through the Great Depression and how they like to generally hoard everything. That might almost be something we see again, except this time in a more sort of hopefully techno-savvy frugality mindset where most folks spend their time saving and investing, which is already what we're seeing with usage of Robinhood up over 300% during this epidemic so far, or pandemic so far. The author then talks about, look, usually when there are downturns, the inefficient businesses go away, and that actually ends up being a benefit. It's like a big weeding out. But this kind of situation without stimulus actually means that successful businesses could end up failing, which is really bad, especially if we're letting businesses fail because we're afraid of inflation, when indications in the market suggest that inflation might only be 1% over the next 10 years. And this is where the Economist really cautions Trump and the White House and says, you know what? You shouldn't take this data-dependent wait-and-see approach, because if you do, you're going to basically be sitting on your hands until the quarterly data comes out for quarter 2 and quarter 3, and by then it'll be too late to start preparing a new round of stimulus. The damage will already have been done. And instead, the White House would be wise to use this period that, Congress is in recess to basically develop its own version of what a stimulus legislation should contain. And even if that means it was one that was completely rewritten from what the representatives drew up in the House of Representatives. Now, all of this sounds nice, but what about the actual next round of $1,200 stimulus checks? Well, I've already broken that down over the last few days. In fact, you may have already heard the information that I broke down over the last 3 to 4 days regurgitated in many different formats, and that's wonderful because it just spreads information more. More power to the information sharing culture that we have now, and I think it's wonderful. And if you haven't yet caught up on that information, we basically know that Republicans in the Senate are indicating we might not see the next $1,200 stimulus stimulus check package pass until probably the end of June, which means we might not actually see money in the pockets of American people who need it until the end of July, which is kind of ridiculous because that's another 2 months away. It's like 9 weeks away, which is insane. And a lot of you resonated with my analogy yesterday where I said, why is it that Congress gets to go on recess, yet when we're children and we haven't finished our homework, we don't get to go on recess. We have to stay in the classroom and finish our work. Well, apparently this is not urgent enough for Congress. And it's very frustrating, especially at a time when Dr. Fauci comes out and says, hey, you know what? We've got promising evidence that we'll see a vaccine by December or January, but I won't make you any promises. And on good news of this potential vaccine trial going well with Moderna, guess what company executives did after the stock went up 30%? They sold about $30 million in shares, and the company is now down 25% from the intraday peak it was at. Isn't that just the shocker? The rich are getting richer while everybody else is getting screwed as our government sits around with a let's wait and see. In the meantime, I'm going on recess. I guess the fact that 1 in 12 people who have a mortgage are not making their payments is not enough of a sign that the people need help. That means every 12th house you drive by, if that house has a mortgage on it, which generally it does, either the landlord or the homeowner is not making their payment every 12th time. Every 12th house you drive by to go to the grocery store, or I don't even know where you're going, maybe you're going to the beach, is not making their payment. Yet Congress is going on recess. Even Hertz, the rental car company, just filed bankruptcy because guess what? All of the cars they were selling to try to make their debt payments were not bringing in enough money to be able to make their debt payments, and they've officially filed for bankruptcy. This adds into the crew of J. Crew, Neiman Marcus, and of course, now Hertz, of large companies that have already filed for bankruptcy, and we're expecting to see many, many more. All the while, it seems like our politicians are blinded by the stock market. Fortunately, there are folks like Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter and Square, creating their own campaigns to donate essentially stimulus checks to individuals. In fact, Andrew Yang has partnered with Jack Dorsey to donate $250 to $20,000 to individuals and families in need. Andrew Yang was, of course, that politician who was famous for the freedom dividend, basically universal basic income of $1,000 per adult per month if you were over 18 years old. Federal Reserve presidents also reiterated at the end of this week, like Mr. Kaplan on CNBC's Squawk Box, indicating that yes, it is still clear we're going to need more fiscal action, aka more action, more money spent by Congress to be able to prevent permanent damage to the economy if it's not already too late. And now it's just a matter of limiting how big that scar is going to be. And then, of course, we still have a lot of backlash over Joe Biden's phrase yesterday, which I broke down in an early morning video yesterday. That, of course, has now become a pretty viral issue for Joe Biden to deal with, and he's even now faced with backlash from the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, where they're countering, saying, wait a minute, we've never actually endorsed you, Joe. What are you talking about? That is not a good look, and of course, Republicans like Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump are taking the opportunity to jump on Biden and his gaffe by suggesting how successful their policies have been, like opportunity zones, criminal justice reforms, and other things. And really, you could just look at Donald Trump's tweet stream to see how he's trying to take advantage of this mistake by Joe Biden. But then again, you can't blame them because that's the game of politics. Now, let me give you a quick little heads up on stocks and the stock market if you're looking to invest in something, but I do just want to quickly remind you, get your life insurance down below if you have not yet. Before this video ends, you could literally have life insurance. At the very least, click the link, get a quote. It's so easy. And it's not like those stupid like car insurance things where they ask you a million questions, or like home insurance where it's frustrating to get the insurance and then it like shops multiple quotes for you. you. It's not some stupid marketplace. You literally put your info in. Right there, it'll tell you if you qualify and how much your premium would be. I'm finding that 99% of you all qualify, so you may as well see how much that life insurance would cost you. After all, we're in a pandemic. Then get your 2 free stocks with Webull. Deposit $100, get 2 free stocks with Webull, and of course use my coupon code in the links down below to join me. I'm planning a complete video on this and sort of my opinions on this, but I want to give you a little bit of a heads up. Think to yourself, if the next 10 years are going to be based in frugality, that is not necessarily a social distance culture, but one that's based in frugality. The fact that job security isn't what we thought it was. The fact that companies can cut you that fast and all of a sudden you have nothing to go back to, and all of a sudden your skill set becomes old and atrophied as the Federal Reserve warns, and all of a sudden income just doesn't look that pretty like it used to. Well, now is the time as stock market investors, whether you got a little bit of money or a lot of money, to really be thinking to ourselves, okay, how can we make sure we take advantage of a transition to a culture over the next 10 years of frugality? And that is my expectation for a video that I have coming up. This is the kind of thinking and thought-provoking discussions that I like to have in my daily live streams every day the market is open. So make sure to join that program down below. Would love to see you there. But stay tuned. I expect to release a video like this within the next few days. Hopefully you love it. I know it'll be a little bit more niche for those of you interested in the stock market. Should still be fun. And of course, if you are a real estate investor, now is definitely the time you want to be buying properties below market value. Certainly do not want to be paying market value for properties right now. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and until next time.